Hi, Dr. Tease.
Hi.
All right. Do you want to start us off, or I can start us off? I don't mind.
You could start us off if you'd like. I'm gonna
Cool.
pull up the article on my computer.
Yeah, same. Good
You don't
call.
need it
Yeah.
because I thought
Oh,
there were some really interesting points too. So
yeah,
yeah.
there were a lot of really interesting points. Okay, so I really enjoyed reading the article, especially because I have a new student that he has an interest in composition, and I have been trying to encourage him to like continue to work on it and try to give him things to expand upon. I think like in this article, one of my favorite parts of it was it talking about how the criteria you choose is going to be specific to the student and almost specific to
Mhm.
each composition, and how damaging it can be when you have just a rubric that's super generic and you apply it to them, and how personal assessing it. It's really almost this is similar to the article we read last week, of that it's about having that relationship and really just
Mhm.
nurturing. Okay, it's specific to the style, specific to the student, and what can I say as like a teacher or to assess what the student has done, and to treat it as a musical expression and
Mhm.
art, and not just as like an assignment or something that they check off. And I love the point that they that I don't actually know who is it, was it a guy, or yeah, Daniel, that he wrote um about the composers breaking the rules, and they give a lot of examples of Mozart and everyone else,
Yeah.
and that's for real composers. And that like kind of hit home for me. I like that they brought that up, but I guess just it for me, like I'm going to actually look through this and have it as a part of my library, just because it'll be really applicable when I um, am teaching my students these things, because like no one has taught me how to assess composition. So I think that this was actually a really applicable article for me in
Mhm.
my life right now. And lastly, just the addressing how you give feedback on a human level. So the tone of your voice and the compliment sandwich that Dr. Tease always talks
Mhm.
about, that's super, because it is so personal.
Yeah.
And you could really crush someone, especially as a teacher, when, as a student, you always want your teacher's approval, being like, hey, that sucked. Like, that is like, obviously,
Yeah.
you never say that, but even just the tone and just how you say it, instead of like saying it in a really encouraging and like a way that the other person can receive it as
Mhm.
constructive. So that's what I thought about it.
I agree with everything you said. I took some notes and it's funny I put compliment sandwich slash cookie because I
Yes.
was it compliment cookie um because I pulled that out too, and it's like but also kind of going back into kind of a rubric. I highlighted a part that was just like, composition is very personal, individualistic, personal, and can be crushing that creativity
Mm,
by kind of giving this rubric firsthand, because then it just becomes this guideline. Okay, I got to follow that. Oh, got 10 measures. I'm in a key. I have a melody here. Like, and then it becomes not as meaningful. And
yeah.
so when we're trying to create like, meaning in our curriculum and having our students kind of connect a specific concept within their like personal experience, I mean, yeah, starting here's the rubric, and that can be pretty crushing, just that creative side. And so that's something that like I agree with what you said. It's just this is a great article to kind of help us kind of facilitate how to assess the process. So kind of giving the basic guidelines. You're going to compose something, and whichever way you want to start that, and then introducing a rubric later on. I think the author mentions that like you can, and that's kind of what's happening to us now, right? We were able
Yeah.
to create a rubric together and come up with these like criteria that we want to be kind of assessed on. And I think that's also reassuring. It's like you're not going to be graded on kind of your creativity and how your mind processes things, but these like simple little criteria that are just kind of overall,
Yeah.
you know, the composition. So
Hmm.
I thought that was really interesting because I think it is hard, you know, to assess composition. And I often think of like my composer friends, and it's like they're having their works like critiqued all the time, but you know, it's at a level where you're taking that criticism. But here we're talking about, you know, secondary students maybe, right?
Yeah, it's so
Let's say
different than like.
completely different.
Hmm.
So I mean, kind of taking these like cautious steps and just kind of, yeah, it's just really interesting, just like just certain qualities to assess. And then it was I highlighted something else I thought, yeah, because it's just the meaningful expression, right? So they're talking about authentic assessment,
Hmm.
and that, yeah, just meaningful musical expression. It's not merely a school exercise. I think that's on the last page.
Yeah. I think that as this like applies to our situation, like I'm thinking me as like a student, also as a teacher, that there's a time and a place
Mm-hmm.
for that critique. For example, when you have like a young plant and you can't just like pick all of the like dead leaves off when it's just a sprout because it's like just growing and can barely stand on its own. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of what I've been reading in these articles has been just straight encouragement. Like you're there as like like a sounding board, and you're there to like water and to encourage and to maybe pick some things that might be in its way and to guide and all those things. But doing like the actual pruning, but when it's in that stage, is going to probably crush the idea. So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like when a student comes to you with something like, okay, awesome, and then once it's more mature, okay, like how do we strive for excellence in that?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't really know what you're striving for until it's really there, and you also don't know what the student is kind of capable of. And there's a feel like a fine line between just being completely stuck and being lazy.
Yeah.
And I think as teachers, the laziness is what bothers us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, like you can do more, you can be better, and it's not anything else besides the fact that you're not putting the effort for it. But it's different for every student and what the effort looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting thing. I think I'm like interested in seeing in even this with
Mm-hmm.
my piece of, okay, when am I being lazy and when am I just like struggling with this assignment because of however many reasons, because of like everything, because of the fact that we can't actually compose together, because of the fact that I just don't have like enough ideas or the length of time or whatever it is. It's not like just one thing.
Yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
was thinking about that too, like our connection to our composition, what we're doing. And I think kind of the way it was scaffolded was really great because we started with kind of a score study. And it's like we were able to pick a piece
Yeah.
to really kind of dig in to that meaning and, you know, pull out little exercises and create these little warm-ups and, you know, teach the class. And
Hmm.
then to use that same score and pull a musical element that we gravitated towards and then maybe take that and then run with that idea. It's like, okay, I'm going to focus on melody. Let me just sit and figure out a melody, you know? And I
Yeah.
think that's less overwhelming than like, hey, you have to compose and it needs to be good and playable. And I think I can imagine even for a younger student how overwhelming that might be, especially the kids who may feel I don't know. I often find that like I always tell myself, oh, I'm not very creative. Or when I was younger, I was really creative. And as I got older, it just kind of became, um, I lost my creativity somewhere along the way, you know, but it's always there. It's just we're not using those skills constantly. You know, it's like, give me a score and I can play it, but tell me to compose my own piece. And it's like, uh,
Paralyzing.
yeah. And so just having this one little element to reference, oh, melody, all I have to create is a melody. There's that little, like the seed, like your type, the analogy of the plant. And it's like, okay, I have this melody, my little seed, planting it. And for me, it really helped to kind of sit at the piano and just,
Yeah.
that's finding a strength. And so I think guiding our students in a process like this, asking those questions, right? Those kind of personal questions. How, how did you start this? Or why did you choose that one note, that starting pitch? So I think that process with my composition too, I mean, that really was really helpful. And referencing Bach, and then not, it's like, how do I connect this to myself? And
Yeah.
just kind of building that way. And then it's like, okay, now I actually have like so many measures, and now it's going back and kind of troubleshooting things that might sound a little wonky, and like, why does it sound that way? And then it's like, oh, my chord is a little off, so I think you kind of have to, like, I felt like I kind of moved backwards in a sense too, in order to progress forwards again, if that makes sense. Kind of just this started, with the seed, and it's kind of like,
yeah,
and
like,
that makes sense.
No, it totally does. And like the teacher's role in that, like, coming about. And I think like one thing I really appreciated you sharing is, like, I think a lot of us adult music students that aren't composers feel this way, is that you do feel like you were much more creative, and then things were kind of spoken over your life and spoken into you as a musician, like, oh, like, you're not so good at that, maybe try something else. And how impactful that is to, like, this day, we're grown adults, and like have been validated to a certain extent that we're in music school, like we made it, but still that, like, those words that are maybe not even supposed to be hurtful, or maybe not even meant in that way, are preventing you from being creative. And because I've totally experienced that in like a different way, but I understand what you're saying. And I think that is something I want to be super aware of as a teacher, of not saying things that kind of become, they just start wearing it, and now it's like, oh, it's a part of me. It's like, no, that isn't. You're not supposed to wear that I'm not creative. Yeah.
It's true. And it's like, I'll share a story with you really quick. I have a high school student that I was working with at the Boys and Girls Club, and he's a senior, and he came into my program as a sophomore and could not match pitch. He's a vocalist. He plays guitar a little bit. And he one day came in with like a poem, and it was like really deep. He's a dreamer. He felt like, oh, I can never go to college. And I'm sitting there, and that's what I'm reading from this poem. And I learned so much from just these few lines that he wrote, and I'm staring at him, and it's like, you totally need to turn this into a song. Like, it's so creative. I can, in my own mind, I can create something, I can hear something, but I kind of want to see what you could do with it. And he came back in, and it was like a 2-chord song, and it was the coolest thing. It was so meaningful. And it actually inspired him to go talk to one of our college liaison staff, and he applied for college. And it was because he felt like
living out the article.
And so I often go back to creativity, because it's like, even as an adult, I'm like, oh gosh, I was so creative as a high schooler. And I often tell my students that, and they teach me, and it's like, you're still creative, like, it's there, you're just you're so busy, Miss Christine. And it's like, I am busy. And and it's like, now with this project, I have been having fun with it, because I just kind of like, you kind of just have to let go, and not be so by the book, I think, at times. And then then we can go back and but I just thought it was really interesting, just thinking back, and I just let him do his own thing, and I just let him play, and I didn't. And so when I read these questions, and it's like certain questions to kind of ask a student, instead of saying like, that's wrong, or that's definitely something I want to steer away from. It was just like hearing what they have to say about it, and that meaning and connection. So kind of going back to creativity and meaning, and I think that's really important. But it's also hard to assess, so that goes back into the whole, like, how do you assess that? So like, how do you feel about NAFME? There's that example with that, like, NAFME composition evaluation criteria, but I
What
feel like
page is that on?
that's 55. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's like kind of overall, like it's like broad criteria, right? Compositional technique, overall appeal, and originality. And I know originality came up in one of our criteria.
Mm-hmm.
But like, how do you assess originality? It's like, I mean, I feel like that's just a very open-ended question. I think we maybe touched on, you know, last class. I think it's just, is it more so, I think here refers, they're saying refers to the aspect of the piece that reveal the composer's individual voice.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's open-ended for a reason, and like I understand that it's kind of like you read it, you're like anxiety, like originality, like what does that mean? How do I like what? Yeah. So I get that, and I think that you don't want it to be like on one hand completely like plagiarized,
Yeah.
obviously. So that's why this composing is something that hasn't been done before, and it's you and it's original. So I think it's more like if you compare it to something that is like completely copied,
Mm-hmm.
kind of defining it by the opposite of.
Yeah.
And I think you can also maybe find that out by talking to the composer. Okay,
Yeah.
where you're coming from, like why did you do this? Well, I did this because of da 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 da. And you're like, oh, that is original. That is original train of thought. Even maybe when you hear it, it isn't. So you need
Program notes or compositional notes,
right.
something act. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like you could assess that maybe through not just orally, but like communicating verbally.
Yeah.
That would just be my only
Yeah.
guess.
I think that makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. You?
We covered it. Yeah. No, we're good.
Okay.
All right. Well, it was so fun getting to know you and just like spending